What is happening, NBA fans? I am your host, Matt Knost. Welcome into another week of Dropping Dimes. I hope everybody out there is good. It was an interesting week post-trade deadline. What recent additions have looked good, what haven't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to start with one of the trades, which is Myers Leonard to the Oklahoma City Thunder has now been waived. So Myers Leonard is now officially out of a job. All for being an idiot. That's got to hurt. But if anybody out there is looking for a center, you can have Myers Leonard on the cheap right now. But it's more so, traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Trevor Ariza to the Heat got back. And OKC also got a second rounder in the process, adding to their bevy of overall future draft picks. So between now, this year's draft, and 2027, they have 34 total picks as of right now. 34, 17 first, 17 second. Now, a number of those there's tremendous protections on it. So if it falls within that protected range, several of those will eventually just relay into a second rounder as opposed to a first. But still, they're getting something in this equation. And OKC, Sam Presti, has amassed so many assets that eventually he's going to be able to make a move here that's going to be really impressive, more than likely. Otherwise, they're going to be drafting and have so much young talent that they'll be in trades galore there. They should be the big movers and shakers over the next 3 to 4 seasons. It should be interesting. I mean, this is a front office that did draft Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka. So not too shabby a track record. And they also have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on their squad right now, who looks like a potential future perennial all-star. You surround him with other guys roughly on his same timeline over the next couple of years, and then you take those future acquisitions that you have and trade for the veteran help that you're going to need. This team looks like it could be just once again, a perennial contender. So I've got a few friends that are OKC fans, and they've been hurt over the past few years. I know several that still hold grudges to Kevin Durant. And then, the Westbrook's time passed. The Paul George experiment didn't last that long. They were in the mix for Western Conference Finals and potentially making the finals there for quite a long time. And now they're relegated to middling to lower middling status in the West, but their future on potential is bright. And having Shai Gilgeous is a huge feather in their cap because that is someone that they can build around. So of the trade deadline stuff, that to me was the most interesting, is the fact that the Heat needed to get off of Myers Leonard. I mean, dropping an anti-Semitic word in a community that's, fairly large Jewish population, probably not the smartest move on his part. But they get Trevor Ariza back, somebody who can help. I don't really think it affects their championship odds or anything like that all that much, but potentially could give you more minutes than Myers Leonard was willing to. But more so just for OKC, they amassed another damn pick. I mean, eventually they have to do something with this. You don't want to end up like Danny Ainge with the Celtics of every year the fan base is looking at all these assets that they have, and it translates into Tatum and Brown, but beyond that, they have trade exceptions. Well, that's the other thing. I think OKC now has 6 trade exceptions. Whether or not they have the ability to use any of those, some of them are pretty massive too. But it descends down. It's like 20 million, 18 million, 14 million, 12 million. So they've got quite a bit there to make some moves. It'll be intriguing because they have the assets to, if there's any kind of superstar that is unhappy in their current situation, they can come in and godfather offer better than just about anybody, if not anyone else in the league. So it should be interesting. But another trade deadline individual that I want to talk about was Aaron Gordon to the Denver Nuggets. I have watched the 2 games that he has played, and it's going to take him a little time to acclimate to a new system, to new teammates, for him to figure out where he fits in best, and also to understand where his teammates like to get the ball. And knowing, he's already got it down of leaking out as soon as a rebound comes down, just like last night. And he flew out, and it was, I want to say it was Jokic to Murray, and then Murray to Gordon. And then there was another flash out where Gordon ran the entire paint and got a nice layup. One thing that I do like from them is they've taken an action that they do with Michael Porter Jr., and they have Aaron Gordon doing it now, which is perfect for him. So Murray and Jokic run a ball screen at the top where Jokic ends up with the ball, right? And you have either Gordon or MPJ down in the corner. So Murray, after setting the screen, flashes over and does a flex screen down to the corner to Gordon or MPJ's man. And then that individual, Gordon or MPJ, runs the baseline and gets an easy dunk from Jokic. And that's the beauty of having somebody like Jokic, a 7-footer who has that passing ability and the vision to always be looking and ping-ponging the ball around, trying to find the best, shot opportunity. It's a reason that he's leading the MVP discussion, but it's nice to see Gordon in a role that makes sense for Gordon. In Orlando, when you'd watch, because of, the guards were always so up and down and with injuries and dudes in and out of the lineup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, he was forced to run point, which is not his natural position when you watch him. And the weird thing is, by the numbers, like if you ran a pick and roll, he was initiating as the guy with the ball on the pick and roll, and he's the one that was floating, assists to the man that was rolling. And that just doesn't seem the natural state of Aaron Gordon. So if you flip him over to, okay, we have competent ball handlers and we can run screen and roll with you off of Murray or potentially Jokic, or, we have guys that can do that. And you get Gordon into his natural position of the guy that's rolling to the basket. There should be 2-time dunk champion is a force finishing at the rim. I mean, the guy can just fly flat out. So why in the world are you not the one that's on the roll here and just flooding to the rim at every opportunity? And I think that's going to shift dramatically as he gets more and more established within Denver, but he's going to be rolling on these screen and rolls quite a bit. But it's good to see that they already have that flex screen baseline action for him, and he looks comfortable in it. And he provides them a lot of, if not everything, that they lost with Jeremy Grant. And the nice thing for them is, A, they have Gordon under contract for another year, but B, the contract is not nearly as steep as Jeremy Grant's. This year, Gordon's is 18, Jeremy's is 19. Next year, it's 20 for Jeremy, and then 21 the year after. And Gordon's actually descends to like $16.4 million. And then he's a free agent after that. But the descending scale on that, so you're not paying the additional, few million, which they're already going to be pushed up against the cap anyway. So to have that little bit of flexibility after the season, they also picked up JaVale McGee, excellent backup center, can easily platoon and go deep with you into the playoffs, and knows what his role is, has zero problem playing it. And as he's proven, he can be an important cog in a championship contender. He's done it with 2 different teams now, fulfilling the same role, and he can bring that to you as a group of guys that, you push teams in the postseason last year, but you need that extra little bit of, veteran calm in the locker room, and McGee can give you that. But his contract and Millsap's contract come up at the end of the year. So that frees up $14 million. And then you couple that with the descending nature of Aaron Gordon's. So they've freed up a little bit of cap space and potentially could go out and add like a small piece here or there. I mean, they are kind of hamstrung now. This is their team for the next 2 years, by and large. They've traded away a decent amount of their young assets to get this core, but at the same time, they have a solid 4, which is more than you can say for a bunch of different teams. The first one that comes to mind is the Mavericks. Porzingis is in and out. I mean, they made a trade for Melli and Redick. I like that for them. Pick up 2 good shooters. But their core is what? I mean, they could have held on to Curry, which would be better than Richardson as if Richardson played this year. But it's, basically you just have one man down there if Porzingis is going to be in and out. I don't consider Tim Hardaway Jr. part of that core. Maxi Kleber or et cetera. Whereas Denver we got 4 dudes. We're rolling out with 4. MPJ keeps growing. Jamal started off slow, but that could have just been he always kind of starts a little bit slow. But such short amount of rest between the end of last season and they played so many games in such a short duration of time to recoup that quickly. He started off a little slow, but he's rounding into shape nicely. Jokic is playing like an MVP. Now you throw Gordon in that mix, and there's 4 guys, precisely what you have right there. So they're going to be a tough out. Once again, 4 teams. All right, so the chat is popping off already. Riley Pangrass says, Gordon would have been better for Boston than Fournier. Should have gone that route. Fournier going 0 for 10 in his first game does not help, especially after he tweeted out, hey, Boston, Google me. That being said, Fournier will be good for them. I'm not entirely sure, even if they added Gordon, does that suddenly vault them into that top 3 status? I don't think so. They weren't an Aaron Gordon away from competing with the likes of the Nets and the Bucks and the Sixers. They're not. Especially if Brown and Tatum are going to continue to play like passive at times. But Fournier should be decent off the bench for the Celtics in the long term. Johnny Shoemaker, what do you think of the Bulls' moves they made? I love Vooch and Tice. Have both shown flashes so far, and the chemistry seems to be building. Also between Lonzo and Schroeder, who would be a better fit? It's still too early to tell. As Magic fans point out, Vooch is great, but you kind of need to tailor the offense for Vooch. Now, the combo pairing of him and Levine, they should work well as a tandem together. And I am a big fan of Tice. Actually, you'll hear it if you listen to tomorrow's top 10, because we recorded that right as the trade deadline was happening. I'm a big fan of Tice. The problem with Tice is he does not get calls. And it's difficult to watch at times. I know I listened to a bunch of different draft coverage afterwards, and Simmons and Russillo were talking about it. And a friend of mine in Boston, like a season and a half ago, told me to be on the lookout for it. Because I try and bounce around, but I watch a decent amount of Celtics games, and I've always liked Tice. And once he pointed it out, I was like, wow, you aren't kidding. And it was especially egregious at times in the bubble last year, where he's getting phantom fouls where watching it, and I have no dog in this fight, and be like, come on, like, what is he supposed to do in that situation? Or the offensive player jumped into him and he's getting called for the foul. It happens over and over and over again. But I do genuinely like Tice. I know I heard at least the motivation was to get under the tax, which sucks because that's a guy that they could definitely use. But I'm happy for the Bulls to have gotten him. Lonzo Schroeder, well, Schroeder's on a contract, and I don't think he wants to leave LA. So we'd have to make a hell of an offer to get him, whereas Lonzo's can be gotten. Although if you listen to JJ Redick today, dealing with the front office in New Orleans, it's a dicey proposition. He has unkind things to say about how duplicitous that front office is. But I'd like to see how this team plays out before I go and tweak it once again, because we still have the Lauri Markkanen contract to deal with in the offseason. So what we do there will determine what ability we have outside of. And I hope Lauri balls out and he earns a nice contract for the remainder of this season and then going forward. And then Shoemaker also adds, he's happy for the Lakers picking up Drummond. I think it would be a great fit. Him, Davis, and Harrell will be a nightmare in the offensive rebounding. Yeah, I like Drummond. I mean, he'll immediately slot into the starting position, and Gasol will go to the second unit, which should be interesting because the fit between Gasol and LeBron has been pretty excellent, man. They have a good vibe between the two of them. They pass well. I'll be intrigued because Gasol keeps the ball moving and has good eyes and makes great passes. Will Drummond be able to fit that role? Because they need the ball to ping around and they don't need to just stop in position. Yeah, he'll get a bunch of rebounds. Andre Drummond always gets a bunch of rebounds. But can he fit into the fluid style of that offense? But they definitely could have used the help. I'll be curious to see what it does to Harrell's time, especially in the playoffs, because he's such a defensive liability that any team worth their salt, if Harrell's in there, is just going to run pick and roll or pick switches until they can get Harrell on whatever guy they want and then continue to run one-on-one against him. And it's going to get bloody and you'll have to sub him out. So Drummond at least gives you more depth at that position. So if Harrell becomes a liability on defense more than his offense creates, you can easily take him out and you have options if Anthony Davis doesn't want to play the 5, especially late in game. Although I don't really foresee Harrell closing games in the playoffs for them anyway, even if they hadn't gotten Drummond. All right, but moving on. Daniel Carr said, I thought Denver missed out on a trade like Drew Holiday for a few seasons now, so I'm glad to see them doing something. Yeah, the problem is with Denver is they've been so good at drafting. They have guys for days that so many other teams are interested in, and you can't find playing time for all these guys. So they've had to let some go for less than ideal, return contracts or players, or the promise of their upside is higher than what they got back in return. Drew Holiday would have been interesting on them, but I think Gordon fits in better. Although they did sacrifice a little bit of depth at the point guard position, by losing Harris. But Harris is so in and out of the lineup that it's a gamble that they're willing to take. So not too bad on that front. And, if Campazzo can keep trucking dudes like he did Ben Simmons last night, maybe that's all the dog they need. He's there, Marcus Smart mixed with Della Vadova. Just Bulldogs dudes. Maybe. Let's see. Then Riley. Oh, that's a chat. It's an inner chat discussion going on, and I'll leave that be. But I do thoroughly enjoy the addition of Aaron Gordon thus far. I think that it'll translate long term because he'll know what his role is pretty quick. There is a distinct pecking order there. And I felt like the biggest friction could have come from him and MPJ. And MPJ was celebrating, on a great oop dunk that he had last night. I don't know why I called it an oop dunk, like I'm 65 years old. A great oop. So the fact that he doesn't feel threatened by Gordon and is celebrating the possibility that he brings to the team, and it hasn't affected his shots thus far, I think this is a very big win for Denver. Do I think it vaults them into potentially making it out of the West? I think anything is possible this year if the Lakers' health is still going to be up and down. I mean, LeBron is still going to be out another, 3 to 5 weeks-ish. With him and AD out, this team is floundering right now. They really need to go 500 for this duration, because if they slip down into the play-in status and they have a bad night on whatever that play-in game is, now if they slip down to 9-10, one bad night screws them. If they are 7-8, then you have to win once, as opposed to 9-10, you got to win twice. So on the 9-10, if they slipped all the way down to 9 or 10, which is hypothetically conceivable, it's more conceivable they slip down to like 7. But they have a bad night, they're going home. It's March Madness for the pros. You would assume that if LeBron and AD are healthy, that they're not going to have a bad night. But anything is possible in a one-game situation. And when a team is playing with desperation, as those play-in game teams would be doing, it's a game 7. So they should be leaving it all out there on the line. I mean, look at Memphis last year that lost to Portland. That's a hell of a game. And they played their asses off. Damn near made it in. I mean, had they not lost so many games in the bubble, they would have made the playoffs. But it's a testament to how fun that could really be, but how severe and detrimental to certain teams that feel like they're, once again, championship contenders, and the Lakers by rights should have that feeling. But if they don't get some sort of 400 to 500 ball from the guys that are on that squad, while AD and LeBron are sitting, this could turn really bad for the Lakers. Although the addition of Drummond, perhaps that shores up, he is going to start at center. And perhaps that guy that's been used to carrying the burden of being the face of a franchise can really help shore up and get them back to 500-ish ball. That's all they really need to do, 5-5 type of jazz. Because, Wes Matthews was quoted as saying, this is, the silver lining on this is that guys who are further down in the rotation will be getting more time and up to kind of game speed and used to the high leverage moments that we'll need in the playoffs, which is kind of true. But when you look at the roster, I really only believe that holds for Talen Horton-Tucker. Because by and large, everybody else is either long-term vet or got the taste of that and played those minutes last year when they won the championship. If you had this situation last year, then yeah, you could say that about Caruso. Now that the expectations of a championship are on this team, we want to see how you perform in KCP and, on down the line. But they've done it. They come up in big spots for a team that won a championship. So they know what they're good and not good at. Talen Horton-Tucker has just been thrust into more playing time this year. So for someone like him, yes. And now with the addition of Drummond, just to get him in the mix and see if he can get kind of a two-man game going with Schroeder. Yeah, I can see that. But the whole Wes Matthews of this is, there is a tremendous benefit to this overall that we can get more PT for guys. And I somewhat believe what you're saying right now. All right, moving on. Another surprising one that I've watched now a couple of the games because I wanted to see what it looked like, which was the Hornets without LaMelo Ball. And it's It's been pretty impressive. So Ball fractured his wrist. He went up for this really pretty layup that missed, but it was a hell of a, athletic and agile move that he does, like leaning and goes up with, I believe, his left hand, and then comes crashing down and fractured a bone in his wrist. And they had surgery on it, and he's out. Right now, there's going to be a reevaluation in 3.5, 4 weeks. So there's a chance that LaMelo comes back. But in the interim, Devontae Graham gets bumped back up to starter and, goes from 18, 19 minutes a game to playing like 30 to 32 minutes a game. And when you watch him, it seems like a different one of four guys steps up when they need to as of late. They're 4-1, I believe, since Melo went down. Pardon me, LaMelo. I will not call him Melo until at the actual Melo retires. So LaMelo, Devontae Graham steps up. Malik Monk, the Miami Heat murderer, had a 32-point game the other night. That, he set a career against Miami back in beginning of February. I want to say around the 1st or the 2nd, where he dropped 36 on him. He dropped 32 the other night. Or it's Aaron Gordon, or it's Rozier. Rozier the other night had 20 attempts on threes and had the best, I believe it was the best field goal percentage for anybody that has attempted that many threes in a game. And it was like at 54% or something. And they get a different guy. Now, their biggest problem is, and by the way, they went up and got Brad Wanamaker to help shore up, their guards. Okay. He's solid. But their bigger problem is at the center position, because when they got to roll out there with Zeller and Washington, it's a drag. It is a drag. I mean, they both do things that are advantageous and beneficial to the Hornets, but by and large, if they go up against any team with an elite front court, they don't have the bodies to really stop them. I mean, they crush you with guard play, as evidenced by, once again, just go and look at the stat lines and see the efficiency numbers of Rozier, Graham, Hayward, and then Monk popping off every once and again. And you would assume it's like, this is going to turn into the Hayward team, especially like after the start of the season, and he had some huge games. But Rozier has rounded into shape, and Devontae Graham being pushed back to starter again has thrived in those minutes by and large. So for once, you kind of have to give it up to Jordan. Jordan has made a couple of good free agency acquisitions in Rozier and Hayward. And Kupchak has done well in the draft with Devontae Graham. Malik Monk finally rounded a corner after all these years. But they went out and got two guys. Rozier was the one that I was especially dubious of. Scary Terry on Boston, every time to me was a no, yes. Just he would go up for the shot and be like, I mean, you got to applaud the confidence. I wish I had that much confidence on some level on the court. And that's what, a good shooter needs to have that. No fear. I need to continue to go. I know that I have the talent, play the percentages. I can make these shots. And he just does it. When you watch, it's like, all right, that's a solid shot. And so they have these guys that within the context of their offense are kind of, they know their roles and they're playing them all to a T right now. I mean, what's interesting about LaMelo is, so late in games, any kind of crunch time, high leverage situation, he was on the bench. So they were closing with some formulation of these four anyway. And now for them to all be out there running together in starter minutes, the reintegration of LaMelo, if he does come back, will be interesting to watch, because be curious as to whether or not he gets plugged back into the starting rotation, and then you bumped Graham back down on the reserve role. I mean, you want to kind of take advantage of ever so slightly there. Assist and assist ratio is down. The weird thing when you look at the numbers, like since LaMelo has gone down, Terry Rozier has turned into, his point differential between offense and defense is stellar. Of all guards, he's in the top 10 to 15 in point differential in that span. He's been playing lights out, but his defense has been really excellent. Will that maintain? I doubt it. History doesn't indicate that it will, but crazier things have happened in this league. So, I mean, whoever thought Christian Wood would be this good? I hardly knew the guy's name outside of watching the random Pistons game previously. I didn't know he had this, ability. So perhaps Rozier's finally figured out, and this trend of a double-digit point differential, I want to say it's like 11.1, something along those lines, is something he will maintain. Once again, I'm suspect, but I don't want to just negate. So Daniel Savoa in the chat said, how much and how willing players are to buy in to the new team and their place in it cannot be underestimated. I always think of Sheed when he went to the Pistons. Sheed to the Pistons was excellent. Went from the Jailblazers to, he fit the identity of that team really well, and also gave them an edge, helped give them even more of an edge than they already had, because Tayshaun and Rip weren't running their mouths, and Chauncey was just a methodical surgeon, and Big Ben is a quiet guy. So to have somebody out there jawing, and that jawing basically is the personification of the blue collar mentality that you have, really fit them exceedingly well. Whether or not a new player will buy into their role and the identity of the team makes a big difference as to how successful that trade is or not. Be curious on all these various trades, how many of them really pay dividends for the teams. Like the Rondo Lou Will back to ATL. Good for you, buddy. Enjoy it. I don't know that Atlanta necessarily needed that extra punch off their bench. It doesn't hurt. And especially for Rondo, who, on the one hand, guys like Trae Young said his mentorship and his experience were wildly beneficial for him, and to sit there and be able to pick his brain. And some people believe that Rondo is going to make an excellent coach one day. He seems a bit prickly with various players, so maybe not the most agreeable person. But if you got an entire team to buy into what he's selling, I think he could be a good coach, because he does see the X's and O's. If you can go, like my favorite example, I brought it up, I think, on this show before. But when he was on the Kings, can't remember for the life of me who they're playing, but it's an end of game, out of bounds play. And the Kings are setting up on defense. They have the lead. And Rondo is yelling and pointing at Boogie Cousins, telling him, go stand in the fucking corner. Just go stand in the corner. I realize nobody is over there right now, but trust me, I've seen this play. I've watched tape on it. This is the action they're about to run. So just go stand it. And Boogie is kind of like, basically it's like a dad talking to his toddler at that point. He doesn't want to do it, but he's going to listen. And he kind of shambles over to the corner a little bit. And then the play opens up and it develops, and they ran a screen. And the screen was to get a 3-point shooter open over to that corner that Boogie is suddenly standing in. So they can't make that. And they throw in and they heave up just a nonsense shot because that's all they had. And the Kings win the game. And it's because Rondo's basketball IQ, and he's done the prep. He's done the work. He knew what play was coming. And I think that will benefit the Clippers, because right now the Clippers are just a, hey, it's your turn type of situation. All right, this time we're going to come down and it's an action for Kawhi. And the next time we're going to come down and it's an action for PG. And then the next time we're going to come in, so if you have Rondo in there instituting an offense and directing and orchestrating everything that's happening, I think they'll benefit from that. It should have a good impact for them. They're currently sitting in third, and they're playing solid basketball right now. And nobody is really discussing how well the Clippers are right now. Perhaps it's just because last year they were everybody's darling to win the championship. I picked them just because of their depth, man. They had so much talent, 1 through 12. Looking at it, you're like, how can any team stack up against this? But they flamed out, in the playoffs. So this year, to start off, they started a little bit slower, I guess. But as of late, past like month, 6 weeks or so, they've been playing solid basketball night in, night out. Now they lost last night. I was actually watching that game and I turned it off because I was like, they're going to get this W. It's against the Magic, for Christ's sakes. A team that's been decimated through trades and are full on tank mode, which the Magic need to do. They need to bottom out. Getting Chicago's top 4 projected pick this year is probably going to translate. So you got that, plus your own. You've got a shot now at getting the number 1 overall. And everybody is saying that this is a top 5 draft. I don't really follow college basketball. And by I don't follow at all. I watched 10 minutes of one game of that kid at Oklahoma State. But I haven't seen anything else. But by and large, all the experts are saying like top 5 in this are all really excellent. It's the same names over and over in various orders, but it's going to be one of these 5, and they're all going to be good. So if Orlando, say Chicago's pick is somehow, it can't be 5. I think statistically speaking, it'd be 1, 2, or 3, or then it drops to 8. So if we don't somehow end up with a top 4 pick, then it goes to the Magic, and they could be rebuilding that much better, that much quicker. But to get back to the Clippers with Rondo, I think having somebody in there that can just throw the hammer down and institute an offense and tell guys where to go and set up some sort of identity, which is weird to say for a team that's in third place. In the West, no less. But it just, when you watch them, it's like a variation of OKC back in the day when it was Westbrook, you go down and we'll do an action, plays for you. And then the next time, Durant, and then Westbrook, and then Durant, and then, hey, we'll do something with potentially Ibaka, and then we'll go back to Westbrook and Durant. And, the NBA over the past few years has proven out that when you're that formulaic, then it's easier to defend. And unless they are absolutely apex in the playoffs, that is a recipe for an exit. And Paul George in the playoffs has not proven to be that individual. Hopefully this year, for Clippers fans' sake, he rectifies that. And, because we know Kawhi is, but Kawhi's also physically not where he was 2-3 years ago. So we'll see. But the Rondo addition, I think, was a good. And for Lou Will, somebody that I know Clippers fans enjoyed, but at the same time, when it comes to playoff time, Lou Will tends to disappear. And if you really want to win a championship, that's fine. You can shed somebody that doesn't play well in the playoffs, because winning regular season games doesn't mean near as much. So Savos says Cousins' attitude and his injuries make teams hesitant to pick him up. Well, he is going to sign. Oh, shoot. I read that this morning, and now I'm blanking on where he's going to sign. Dang it. I'll have to look it up. I know I just saw it earlier. Where is Cousins going to sign? Oh, well, you guys can look it up. I don't want to do that and have you listen and or watch me as I search through the internet. Maybe I could do it on my phone as opposed to laptop. Laptop somehow more distracting. But Kyle Harlow says the Clippers playoff performance will improve from last year due to the addition of playoff Rondo. Yes, I agree, but I was impressed. Okay, so Cousins to the Clippers. That's where it is. But in no way, shape, or form did I see Rondo rounding into the third best Laker shooting better from three. Early on in the playoffs, like first couple games, he was pump faking from three, expecting defenders to bite on it. And you're like, oh, okay, buddy, nobody's buying that bullshit. And then he starts hitting him, and he hit him at a clip where you have to respect it. It was upper 30s, low 40s. And like, that's a percentage that you can't back off of. So will we get that type of performance? I mean, Rondo has always been more checked in the playoffs and in primetime games. Just that is the God's honest truth. If it is a, meaningless Tuesday game and they're not on any kind of national TV, then what you're going to get from Rondo more often than not is a subpar performance. Whereas if this is a primetime matchup where he knows eyeballs are watching, he is going to try his utmost. And in the playoffs, game in, game out, he rarely, if ever, checks out. I genuinely believe when he was on the Bulls and that weird team, had he not gotten hurt, we would have taken the Celtics in that first round. As a team, more than likely should have gotten beaten 4-1. And we were feisty. And I credit a tremendous amount of that to Rondo, his presence, the leadership and guidance that he gave that team. That should be able to translate for the Clippers. Will it be as good as the Lakers last year? That's asking a hell of a lot. I'd like to believe it for Rondo's sake, but at the same time, I was skeptical that he was going to be able to do anything remotely close to what he did last year. And that skepticism maintains. Prove me wrong, but it seems like you're on the backside of your career. So to be able to do that night in, night out. But the flip side of that argument is in the playoffs, though, you don't need to look at it as a season. It's its own separate season. It's not the regular. So if you can just dedicate yourself to playing the 20 to 25 some odd games, because we're not assuming anybody's going 16-0 to run through this. So if, say, they go 4-2 in all those series, well, there's 24 games. But you really only need to dedicate yourself to those specific games. So it's a different mentality to check in for a short amount of time as opposed to this year's 72, but 82 on an average season or regular season. So Savo brings up a good point. How willing will the Clippers teammates be to listen to Rondo? But I think he has the pedigree along with Kawhi Leonard. The dissension from the locker room seemed to come from guys not wanting to listen to Paul George, as Paul George was telling them how they should win. And other players in the locker room going, man, who the fuck are you? Like, yeah, you're a better player than me, but at the same time, you haven't won shit. So for you to tell me how a championship team is supposed to be, if Kawhi wants to do that, that's fine. I'm all ears. He's done it. He's been a finals MVP on 2 separate teams. But Kawhi's not going to say that because Kawhi's not vocal like that. Rondo now is a champion on 2 different teams. And the fact that he reestablished his bona fides last year with your crosstown rival should give more credence. And I think guys would be more willing to listen, at least initially. If he becomes too abrasive, then yeah, he could very easily lose them, especially as a mid-season addition to the team. But he can grow into that role. I think, but it's a solid point that your teammates need to be willing to listen. Because I'm assuming everybody that's watching and or listening, you played pickup or on teams where there's been a guy that you just couldn't deal with. There's a dude that I play with all the time, at least pre-COVID. Hopefully with vaccinations and whatnot, I'll be playing again the next couple months, God willing, because much like everyone else and the memes you see, I have definitely put on weight in COVID and I'm not enjoying it in the slightest. But there's a dude that I play with that is hands down the best player. Hands down. And I play with guys, there's a few that played college basketball. And they're solid as shit, but they're all willing to say, this dude is excellent. But he is one of the worst people to play with. Just because whenever he makes up in his mind, oh, hey, I need to be scoring the ball all the time, or we're playing pickup and he'll start riding a teammate because a teammate missed a rebound. And you're like, dude, just fucking relax. We're here to have fun. Yes, we're all competitive, but at the same time, it's like, this game ends. We're going to turn around and play one immediately following. Kyle Harlow says, looks like he's going to Miami. Okay. That's Boogie, by the way. So Bleacher Report and Woj said he's discussing a 10-day with the Clippers. And yeah, I see a bunch of teams in the consideration for signing Cousins. But all indications I see right now are Clippers. All right, anyway. So yeah, Rondo could rub his teammates the wrong way, and it's possible. But I don't know. If you're talking about a pros versus cons, I think the pros of what he potentially could bring, stability and identity on offense, directing traffic, being a genuine floor general, outweigh the impact of him just jawing at dudes. And if it gets to a degree that nobody wants to be around it and there's dissension in the ranks and Ty Lue can feel it, then they will sit Rondo or they'll send his ass home. Simple as that. Now, the downside of that is you could add Lou Will, who his teammates enjoyed his company, seemed like a gregarious and nice guy, and a lot of fun to be around. You are trading that, so you will lose some of that chemistry within the team itself. But if you got to watch another playoff series where Lou Will gives you a whole lot of nothing, once again, I think your teammates be willing to at least give this Rondo thing a whirl. Kyle Harlow said he saw a Photoshop of Heat. Yeah. I saw a bunch of teams being floated, but I just couldn't remember that it was Clippers. And God, I hope Boogie is amazing for them because he has had a tough run of injury luck. And I know Kings fans are none too pleased with his time there just because he began to sulk at the end. And it's part of the personality of who Boogie is. He looks like a grown toddler out there at times. But when you look at the team that they assembled around him, I'd be frustrated too on some level. And the Kings were another team that I was planning or flirting with. They're on my notes to potentially talk about because they've been surging as of late, and they're nipping at the heels to make that play-in game. So if they continue in that trajectory, I'm more than happy to talk about the Kings next week. But I think that is it for today's Drop and Dimes. Unless anybody in the chat has a quick question or something. But a ton of good action out there. I'm looking forward to it. I got nothing else to add today. I was searching my brain for another quick topic. I think I'm going to end it right there. Thanks to everybody that joined in the chat. I thoroughly appreciate it. And if you want to watch in the future and join me, I do it at noon on Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So Tim Williams asked what Tripoli thought of Drummond going to the Lakers. I don't know. I can text him and ask him. I know that we were texting during the trade deadline, and he was stoked about Rondo for Lou Will. Same sentiment I said. It's like Lou Will disappears in the playoffs. So he's happy to have Rondo, and Rondo hopefully gives them some sort of sense of identity. But anyway, if you want to join everybody, we got some late additions, Tim Williams and Ramon Cook in the chat, that is. Head over to youtube.com/dropping dimes, and I do it every week. And, anywhere from 15, 20 people show up and get a nice little chat going. There's sometimes inner chat discussion that, and I appreciate that. I like it. It also helps me bounce around a little bit. I like having guests on the show, but at the same time, it makes my life a little easier when I know, hey, I watch a lot of these games, so I can hear shooting the shit. And if you guys want to shoot the shit with me, I'm happy to do it. So if you want to join the chat, you can go over there, youtube.com/dropping dimes, live every Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time. And otherwise, you can find it on any podcast feed. Subscribe to the podcast feed of your choice. You can follow me anywhere at Matt Knost. Stay safe out there. I'll see you guys another week from now for another edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, let me pull up the song. Dramatic pause. Adios.